Imagine this. You're out on a bright, warm morning in the countryside. The air smells of fresh grass. In the distance, a town awaits, miles down a winding dirt path. Your horse moves at an easy pace beneath you, its rhythmic steps matching the gentle sway of your body. You close your eyes for a moment to feel the sunlight warming your face, but in an instant, that peace shatters. Your horse jolts violently. Your eyes snap open, and you see a badger darting across the path. The horse panics, veering off the trail, straight toward a vast, treacherous swamp. The ground turns to muck beneath its hooves. Each step sinks deeper. The sound of squelching mud fills your ears. Before you can react, the horse's legs vanish into the mire, and yours are trapped alongside its body. The animal's panicked squeals echo across the emptiness. You look around for help, but you're miles from anyone. No trees to grab, no rocks to anchor yourself, no solid ground. And then, in a moment of pure desperation, you reach up and grab your own hair. You pull. You pull with every ounce of strength you have. And slowly, impossibly, you and the horse rise out of the swamp, inch by inch, until you're back on dry land. Safe. A miracle? Number A, fantasy. And it never happened. This is the legendary tall tale of Baron Munchausen, a German nobleman famous for his absurd, impossible adventures. This one, escaping the swamp by pulling himself up by his own hair, became more than just a story. It became a metaphor for one of the most unsettling philosophical problems ever posed, the Munchausen trilemma. In 1968, the German philosopher Hans Albert gave the name to a dilemma, actually a trilemma, that strikes at the very foundation of what we call knowledge. It suggests that any attempt to prove something true inevitably leads to one of three unsatisfactory outcomes. No exceptions. No escape. So, let me ask you, how do you know the things you believe are true? Could you prove them without using other assumptions? Could you prove them without going in circles? Could you avoid falling into an endless chain of whys? Most people have never really tested their beliefs in this way. And when they do, the ground beneath them starts to feel a lot like Munchausen's swamp. The two questions that trap us. Before we dive deep into the trilemma itself, we need to start with two deceptively simple questions. What do we know? How do we know it? The American philosopher Roderick Chisholm made these two questions famous in his book, Theory of Knowledge. At first glance, they sound straightforward. But here's the catch. To answer, what do we know? You need a method, a criterion for determining truth. But to have a method, you first need to know something is true, so you can test the method against it. Which do you start with? If you pick one, you realize you needed the other first. It's a loop, a philosophical snake eating its own tail. This is called the problem of the criterion, and it means that the starting point of all human knowledge is murky. There's no clear first step we can prove beyond doubt. Why this matters to you. This isn't just academic. It's not just a game philosophers play in ivory towers. This touches every part of your life. Think about it. You believe certain things about the world, politics, morality, even yourself. You make choices, sometimes life-changing ones, based on those beliefs. If those beliefs can't be proven in an absolute sense, what then? Some people find this terrifying. Others find it freeing. But either way, it forces us to examine how we think, from swamp to philosophy. Now we step back into the mire, this time not with a horse, but with our minds. The Munchausen trilemma says that when you try to justify any claim as true, you end up in one of three traps. Circular reasoning, where your proof relies on itself. Infinite regress, where each proof needs another proof, endlessly. Axiomatic assumption, where you simply assert something without proof. And here's the kicker. Those are your only options. No matter how clever you are, no matter how much evidence you think you have, you will land in one of them. The first trap, circular reasoning. Imagine I tell you, I'm trustworthy. You ask, how do I know that? I say, because I always tell the truth. You ask, and how do I know you always tell the truth? I answer, because I'm trustworthy. See the loop? Philosophers have a term for this, petitio principii, or begging the question. It's not just a logical flaw, it's a dead end for proof. Religion often gets caught here. For example, claim, God exists. Proof, the Bible says so. Why trust the Bible? Because it's the Word of God. And science? It's not immune either. Science relies on the principle of uniformity of nature, that the future will resemble the past. But how do we prove that? By pointing to the past, which assumes the very thing we're trying to prove. The second trap, infinite regress. Let's say you avoid the loop. You try to base your proof on something different. You ask, why does the Earth exist? Answer, because gravity pulled together dust and gas. Why was there dust and gas? Because the Big Bang created it. Why did the Big Bang happen? Because, and so it goes, forever. Each answer demands another why, and there's never a final stopping point. In mathematics, in cosmology, in everyday reasoning, this regress haunts us. Even if we find the first cause, we can always ask, what caused that? The third trap, axioms. The last escape hatch is just to stop asking. We say, this is true because I say it is. This is the foundation. Mathematics does this openly. Euclid's geometry starts with axioms, statements we simply accept without proof. All of math is built on them. In life, we have these too. Human life has value. My senses generally tell me the truth. The external world exists. These are unprovable, but without them we can't function. So here's the disturbing conclusion. If knowledge requires proof, and proof always ends in circularity, infinity, or assumption, then absolute knowledge is impossible. What does that mean for philosophy, for science, for your life? It gets much deeper, stranger, and more personal. When you first hear the Munchausen trilemma, it sounds like an intellectual party trick, a kind of mental puzzle you can bring out to stump your friends. But the more you sit with it, the more it starts to seep into every corner of your thinking. It's not just about abstract truth. It's about how you navigate your life, how you judge right from wrong, and how you trust your own mind. And if you look closely enough, you'll see that some of the greatest philosophers, scientists, and thinkers in history have been wrestling in the same swamp for thousands of years. Socrates, the man who knew nothing. Let's start with Socrates. In the streets of Athens, he became famous for a peculiar claim. I know that I know nothing. At first, it sounds like false modesty, but it's actually a brilliant insight that fits perfectly with the trilemma. Socrates realized that the first step to wisdom was admitting that certainty was beyond reach. He questioned politicians, poets, craftsmen, anyone who claimed to know something, and showed through relentless questioning that their beliefs rested on shaky ground. When confronted with the problem of the criterion, what do we know, and how do we know it? Socrates didn't try to climb out of the swamp. He just acknowledged that we're already in it. Audience question: what would change in your life if you approached every conversation, every decision, with the humility of, I might be wrong? Descartes, searching for solid ground. Fast forward to the 17th century. René Descartes was on a mission to find an indestructible foundation for knowledge, something immune to circularity, infinity, or assumption. His method? Radical doubt. He stripped away every belief he could possibly doubt. The evidence of his senses, they can deceive us. The existence of the external world, maybe it's an illusion. Even mathematics, perhaps an evil demon, is tricking him. And then, at rock bottom, he found one thing he thought was undeniable. Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Here was Descartes' hair to pull himself out of the swamp, the fact of his own thinking consciousness. But here's the twist. Many philosophers later argued that even this was an assumption. To say, I think, already assumes an I exists. The swamp strikes again. Kant, building bridges in the mire. Immanuel Kant took a different approach. He didn't try to escape the swamp. He tried to build a stable platform within it. Kant argued that the human mind doesn't passively receive the world. It actively shapes it. Space, time, causality. These aren't things we discover out there. They are structures the mind imposes on reality. In other words, knowledge is not a perfect mirror of the world. It's the world as filtered through us. That means absolute certainty about things in themselves is impossible. But we can have reliable knowledge within the framework our minds create. It's like saying, we can't know what the swamp really is, but we can map it well enough to avoid drowning. Nietzsche, dancing in uncertainty. Then there's Friedrich Nietzsche, who looked at the swamp and laughed. For Nietzsche, the very idea of objective truth was suspect. He saw truth as a kind of useful fiction, a set of metaphors and concepts that humans have agreed to treat as real because it helps us survive. Instead of searching for a single, solid ground, Nietzsche encouraged us to embrace the flux, to see knowledge as a tool for life, not a divine revelation. If there's no absolute truth, then meaning isn't something we find. It's something we create. Science. The best map in the swamp. Some people hear the trilemma and think, then science is hopeless. But that's a misunderstanding. Science doesn't claim to escape the swamp. It doesn't offer absolute proof. Instead, it offers models, provisional, testable explanations that work for now. In fact, the scientific method is built to expect its own mistakes. Every hypothesis is open to revision. This humility is a strength, not a weakness. But here's the subtle danger. When we talk about scientific facts, as if they are eternal truths, we forget that science is always an evolving conversation. The moment science claims to be final and absolute, it stops being science and turns into dogma, landing us right back in the trilemma's third trap. The mind's faulty tools. Modern neuroscience adds another layer. Your brain isn't a perfect truth detector. It's a survival machine. It evolved to make quick, useful judgments, not necessarily accurate ones. Cognitive biases like confirmation bias, availability heuristic, and anchoring warp our reasoning every day. Even our sensory perception is filtered, compressed, and reconstructed, more like a virtual reality headset than a clear window to the world. This means that before we even start justifying our beliefs, we're already working with a distorted version of reality. The swamp is in our heads. Relatable example. Ever been absolutely sure you saw your phone on the kitchen counter, only to find it in your bag? That's your brain confidently lying to you. Now imagine this happening not just with objects, but with your beliefs about morality, politics, even love. Everyday swamp encounters. You don't need to be a philosopher to hit the trilemma. It shows up in ordinary life, in relationships. I know they love me because they said so. But how do you know they mean it? Because they wouldn't lie to me. In politics, this policy works because the data shows it. But how do you know the data is accurate? Because it comes from trusted sources. Why trust those sources? In self-belief, I'm not capable of this job. Why? Because I failed before. Why does that prove you'll fail again? Every justification you give can be pulled deeper into the swamp. Wittgenstein. flies in the bottle. No one captured the frustration of this better than Ludwig Wittgenstein. He compared philosophers to flies trapped in a bottle, buzzing against the glass, trying to escape, without realizing the opening is somewhere else entirely. For Wittgenstein, many philosophical problems dissolve when we see that they're just knots in our language. We think we're debating reality, but we're really just tangled in the way we talk about it. In other words, sometimes the swamp isn't out there. It's in the words we use to navigate it, living without absolute ground. So if the trilemma is right and certainty is impossible, how do we live? There are a few paths. Dogmatism. Pick a set of beliefs and stop questioning them. Comforting but brittle. Skepticism. Doubt everything to the point of paralysis. Honest but unlivable. Pragmatism. Accept that beliefs are tools. Use the ones that work, but stay ready to swap them when they break. The third path is where many modern philosophers and scientists find their home. It's about navigating the swamp, not escaping it. Audience question: which path do you think you're on right now? And is it serving you? We've stood in the swamp of uncertainty, examined its depth, and met some of the greatest thinkers who've tried to cross it. We've seen that absolute certainty is impossible. Every justification ends in circularity, infinite regress, or assumption. This isn't just a theoretical problem. It's in our daily lives, our science, our politics, and even our self-image. Now, the real question becomes, what do we do about it? Because if we leave the conversation here, it's tempting to feel stuck, to see life as a maze with no exit. But there is a way forward. It just doesn't look like what we've been taught to expect. Step 1. Redefining knowledge. The first step is to change how we think about knowing. If we define knowledge as justified, true belief that must be proven beyond all doubt, then yes, the Munchausen trilemma destroys it. But what if we shift the definition? The philosopher William James, a key figure in American pragmatism, suggested that instead of chasing absolute certainty, we judge ideas by their practical consequences. Ask yourself, does this belief help me navigate life? Does it make accurate predictions? Does it support well-being for myself and others? By this measure, knowledge becomes less about perfect proof and more about effective action. Think of it like a boat. You don't demand that the boat be eternal and unbreakable. You just need it to carry you across the water. And when it springs a leak, you patch it or swap it for a better one. Audience. Question: what's one belief you've been holding on to just because you felt it had to be absolutely true? And how would your life change if you saw it as a useful tool instead? Step 2. Building good enough foundations. We can't have perfect foundations, but we can have good enough ones, working assumptions that serve as starting points for action. Examples: my senses are generally reliable, though not infallible. Other people have minds like mine. Cause and effect exist in the physical world. These are axioms. We can't prove them without using them, but we can test them indirectly by seeing if they produce consistent, workable results. Science operates this way. Every law of physics is based on unprovable assumptions, yet those assumptions keep generating accurate predictions, so we keep them until something better comes along. Step 3. Practicing intellectual humility. This might be the most important skill you can develop in the age of misinformation. Intellectual humility means holding your beliefs lightly, not weakly. You can still act with conviction, but with the awareness that you might be wrong, and the willingness to adjust when new evidence or better reasoning comes along. Socrates mastered this. Modern cognitive scientists confirm it. People who score high on measures of intellectual humility are better problem solvers, better collaborators, and less prone to extreme polarization. Step 4. The 3-question filter. When you encounter a claim, whether it's from the news, a friend, or your own mind, run it through 3 questions. What evidence supports this? What alternative explanations exist? What would change my mind? The third one is crucial. If you can't imagine any possible evidence or argument that would make you reconsider, you're not holding a belief, you're holding a dogma. And dogma is the swamp pretending to be solid ground. Step 5. Embracing probabilistic thinking. Instead of asking, is this absolutely true? Ask, how likely is this to be true? This shift from binary thinking to probabilistic thinking is how experts in fields like weather forecasting, poker, and epidemiology make better predictions. It's not about being vague. It's about acknowledging the reality that all knowledge is partial and conditional. When you think probabilistically, you start to make smarter bets in conversations, in relationships, in investments, in life choices. Relatable example. If a doctor says a treatment has a 90% success rate, that doesn't mean it's true, that it will work for you. It means you're playing strong odds, but the 10% is still real. This mindset reduces shock when things don't go as planned and keeps you adaptable. Step 6. Meaning without certainty. Here's where people get nervous. If nothing is certain, does that mean life is meaningless? Not at all. In fact, the absence of certainty can increase your freedom to create meaning. Nietzsche saw it this way. Without an eternal, objective meaning handed down from above, we have the opportunity and the responsibility to become authors of our own values. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, put it beautifully. Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose. And purpose is something we can choose, even in uncertainty. Audience reflection. What would you choose to stand for, even if you could never prove it was objectively the right thing? Step 7. The practice of ongoing revision. Think of your worldview as a living document, not a stone tablet. The most successful people in science, art, business, and personal growth are those who can revise their understanding when the world surprises them. This doesn't mean drifting aimlessly. It means steering with a compass instead of a fixed map, adjusting course when new terrain appears. Step 8. Conversations that cross the swamp. When you accept uncertainty, you can approach disagreement differently. You're no longer defending an unshakable fortress of truth. You're comparing maps of the swamp. That opens space for real dialogue. Instead of trying to win arguments, you can explore them. You might even change your map, or help improve someone else's. This is rare. In a polarized world, the willingness to say, I don't know, let's find out, is almost a superpower. Living example, the scientific mindset in daily life. You don't need a lab coat to think like a scientist. Imagine you want to get healthier. You could make a plan based on your current best understanding. Track your results honestly. Adjust when the evidence says it's not working. You've just applied the scientific method, hypotheses, experiments, revisions to your own life. And you've navigated the swamp without pretending you had perfect certainty. The real takeaway, the Munchausen trilemma isn't a curse. It's a compass pointing to a truth about being human. We don't stand on solid rock. We never have. We live, love, think, and create on shifting ground. And that's okay. The goal isn't to escape the swamp. It's to learn how to move through it with awareness, adaptability, and purpose. Key takeaways for your life. Accept uncertainty. You don't need absolute proof to act. Life is lived in probabilities, not certainties. Test your beliefs. Use the 3-question filter to keep your thinking sharp and flexible. Stay humble. Stay curious. Intellectual humility makes you more resilient and open to growth. Use beliefs as tools. Choose beliefs that serve your goals and values, not just ones that feel comforting. Create your meaning. Without absolute truth, you're free to build a purpose worth living for. Final reflection to the audience. Imagine standing in Munchausen's swamp, the mud cold around your legs, the sky wide above you. You know you can't pull yourself out by your own hair. But you also know this. You can take a step, and then another, and as you move, the landscape changes. You might not know exactly where you'll end up, but you'll be moving, learning, adjusting, growing, and that, more than any illusion of certainty, is what it means to live fully,